This is the Cambridge to Mildenhall line, which was built by the Great Eastern Railway and opened in 1885, running for some 20 miles. The line was finally closed to passengers in 1962 and to goods in 1964. A small section from Fordham to Burwell survived for one more year. The station at Bottisham still stands, a forlorn and disused building on the outskirts of the village of Lode. The scene depicted in this film is typical of an East Anglian branch line. The footage was taken in 1959, and the quality of the colour is remarkable. The lack of traffic is all too apparent, but the filmmaker has captured the twilight years of the country branch line. However, the railways at this time were not only about decline. Mainline services continued to draw in large numbers of passengers. In this film, we see the London to Scottish Express. This ran through Peterborough, which was where a branch of the M&GN Railway had ended. The film gives us a wonderful insight into a day in the life of a comfortable express train in the post-war years.
It's strange, if you think of it, how dear to us British people are railways. We've cursed the discomforts they've given us these past 6 years, but still they stand to most of us as a link with happier days. Highlights of childhood were those yearly family excursions when we glued our noses to the window, watching for that first glimpse of the sea. Next to that thrill was the Christmas tide, which brought us that toy railway, with its tiny circular track and the engine with the key which we always lost. Now we're grown up, our interest in railways has lapsed, except of course as passengers. So let us renew our youthful acquaintance with the monsters of the Iron Road. Thanks to modern engineering, turning a 150-ton engine round has become quite a simple job. The vacuum brake is connected up with the turntable, the vacuum is created in the engine brake system, and the table put into gear when the gauge shows sufficient vacuum. And so, with the ease of that legendary acrobat, the engine swings smoothly round, and within a few seconds it has turned a half circle, ready to drive off again. The table is stopped, and the engine chugs off with slow dignity in the direction of the coaling plant. Here, 500 tons of coal are stored to feed the ever-hungry locomotives. The coal wagons are shunted into place at the foot of the plant, locked to a section of the line, and then taken up, and by this means a plentiful supply of coal is always on hand for the engines. At first sight, this seems like carrying coals to Newcastle, but on inspection we find it quite logical. At the top, the truck is automatically tipped and empties, then starts its journey down again. Here, everything is done in strict rotation. After the engine is turned, it comes along for its supply of coal. The chute is opened and 7 tons pour in. Not a bit too much nor too little, just enough for a 400-mile journey. Then off she goes again, this time to take water. The fireman makes sure that the leather hose pipe is properly in the tank, otherwise he might get a soaking. A streamliner takes 5,000 gallons of water, which has been specially softened. You see, engines prefer it that way. Next, the front is opened so that the smoke box can be cleaned out. Ashes and clinkers must be completely removed from all corners so that the fire will draw well when it's relit. Who would know better than the ladies the importance of appearances? And hence we find the toilet of these monsters is left in their capable hands. Wheels, rods and bodywork are polished up until they shine like new pins. It's wonderful what a bit of well-applied elbow grease will do. But things are not always plain sailing, and sometimes an urgent repair has to be undertaken at the shed. Here, for instance, a pair of wheels is receiving attention. Constant running means constant overhauls. Outside, the engine is waiting to have its fire rekindled. A few shovelfuls of coal are put into the firebox together with a special fire lighter. Within a couple of hours, it has burned up nicely, although it takes about twice as long before enough steam is produced to start the journey, when a blazing inferno turns water into driving power. We'll refrain from telling this gentleman any funny stories about wheel tappers. It may be just as well, for it's obvious that this is a highly skilled job. To the experienced ear, the ring of the hammer conveys the soundness of the wheel, and the slightest fault can be detected when the hammer strikes. In fact, the whole safety of a train may well depend upon the alertness of this man's ears. Our railways have always played for safety, and their achievement is envied all over the world. Before each journey, the brake mechanism is inspected. Various methods of braking are employed. Even the smallest fault may endanger the safety of the train, but thanks to the vigilance of the railway engineer, nothing is overlooked. Pressure is checked on the gauge, and outside, the engineer's mate watches to see that the actual brake works smoothly. The test finished, they move on to the next engine. This introduces Tom and Fred, driver and fireman. After signing on, they look at the notice board. Schedules are sometimes altered at short notice. Then they collect their kits from the store. Yes, oil lamps are still in use, but soon they'll miss the smell of oil when they change over to electricity. Sometimes they get a different engine and wonder what today's will be like to handle, for locos, like men, have characteristics. The lamp denotes that they travel light engine, while Tom gets busy oiling the wheel boxes. Leaving Tom and Fred to check over their engine, we go over to the carriage department and find that here 7,000 coaches are cleaned inside and out every day before you and I are allowed in. First, the carriages are drawn through this unique contraption which thoroughly cleans the woodwork, washing away all the dirt and grime of the tunnels and tarns. Water is forced through these giant mops which are kept revolving while the carriages pass along, thus ensuring that each one is evenly washed, while outside the men scrub the woodwork to get off the loosened dirt. With that job finished, the coaches are polished, but there are many other things to be seen to as well. And to keep the wheels turning smoothly, the boxes are topped up with oil every day. In fact, every working part receives attention, just like the engine. Inside, the women are busy sweeping up the ravages of the last journey. If they were asked, they'd tell you that smokers are the most untidy folk, with bun munchers a good second. And it's surprising how many people forget the pennies on the empties. Every set of carriages is equipped with a dynamo which supplies the light. These are driven by belts off the main axle, and as soon as the train reaches about 30 miles an hour, electricity is automatically generated and stored in batteries which have to be regularly checked to make sure that they are in order for a long journey. At last, all the various jobs are finished, and along moves the shunting engine to pull the carriages to the station. But first comes the business of coupling up and connecting the vacuum brake. For no matter how short the journey, the brake must work throughout the train. Within a few minutes, they arrive at the terminus to make up the Scottish Express, and soon the platform will come to life. Already the passengers are arriving at the station, and here life is just one arrival after departure. On any station, the crowd is cosmopolitan, Duke and Gusman rubbing shoulders, farewells mingled with joyful greetings. High above the crowds, the announcer directs us to our train through the microphone with cold aloofness, and we can't help envying her intimate knowledge of the railway timetable, which has always baffled us.
For First, Northampton, Darlington, Durham, Walton, Scarborough, Driffield, Bridlington, finally...
Passengers take a quick cup of tea while supplies are loaded on the restaurant car, with, we hope, an opener.
Change to Newcastle for Sunderland.
And the bookstores do a brisk trade with books from advanced economics to comics. With 5 minutes to go, the express engine backs into the station with all the dignity of the star performer and couples up with the train. The Train Spotters Club, that organization of youngsters which still haunts the stations just as we did, takes down our number. The peaceful exterior of the signal box conceals the intense activity inside. From here, the comings and goings of 7,000 trains daily is controlled. Railway signalling is a bit of a mystery to the layman, for the whole system here is automatic, and the levers not only operate the signals, but ring up the track numbers from which the train is due to leave. The signalman can watch the progress of each train as it enters or leaves the station on this illuminated diagram. Each section of the rail is locked until the train has passed over it, thus avoiding accidents. Back at the station, late arrivals are trying to find vacant seats. Those favourite corner ones facing the engine have been taken long ago. Only a few seconds to go. The track number comes up on the signal after the points have slid over into position. The guard waves his familiar green flag, and slowly the giant engine begins to move dead on time. Stragglers make an imprudent last-minute rush, and with a push they're aboard, while the train steams slowly from the station. Inside, the passengers are settling down for their long journey, and for the next 7 hours the train will be their home. The dismal housing of the great city slips behind, and as we approach the open country, we move forward to the driver's cab. Does the driver enjoy this journey?
Yes, I suppose I do. It's my life. I still remember the great feeling I got when I brought my first express to speed over these tracks and felt the sway of the engine. Passengers don't feel that as one does up here. I did 15 years hard slogging on local lines before I got my job on a passenger express, so that first run meant a lot to me. I remember how I welcomed the sight of Welwyn Viaduct, feeling that the uphill drag was over and we could get down to making up lost time. We were making 70 miles an hour average then. Schedules are still pretty tight. I'll have to clip seconds off on straight runs. This opening haul up to speed fairly eats the steam. About time we picked up our first refill of water. And at regular intervals down the line there are water troughs from which we suck up fresh supplies, and along we come, 70 miles an hour, picking up 5,000 gallons in a few seconds, hardly losing a drop. And back on the train, the attendants are setting up the tables in the dining car. Passengers expect their meals on time, just as if they were at home. We take ours from a billy can. The chefs are busy in the all-electric kitchen. Wouldn't my missus like that cooking outfit? We're nearing Peterborough now. I can always tell it by the sharp smell of burnt clay from the brickfield. It's odd how one recognises places by the smell. I could tell some of the places on the line if I were blindfolded. Peterborough, York, Newcastle, they all put something of their own into the air. Passengers don't notice that sort of thing. Only the kids have poked their noses out of the windows. Fred gets down to a bit of firing. Only a little at a time, that's his motto. The coal in the tender is always kept wet to make it burn longer. 7 tons has to do the trip, and it keeps the dust down and prevents it from blowing into our eyes. You don't like tunnels, and it's worse for us. Smoke, steam, dirt fills the cab with a clammy grime. Doncaster, and find another branch of the train spotters waiting for us.
The engineers work quietly on, oblivious of the deafening rattle of the pneumatic riveting machines as they punch home the rivets with amazing accuracy. The old method of hammering home the red-hot rivets is a thing of the past, for this new method has proved speedier and more effective, and new engines are wanted quickly so that you may travel in more comfort. In another workshop, the calculated blows of the drop hammer stamp out many of the smaller accessories, such as this coupling hook and 101 other items. Further on, a steel bar is being cut by oxyacetylene as clean as a whistle. At last, the engine takes on its familiar appearance. Pointer and cab have already been mounted on the frame, but still the numerous controls have to be installed. However, she's already something worth looking at, and I envy the driver who gets her put on his run. The intricate system of steam pipes still has to be connected in the smoke box. The foreman checks over the blueprint to make sure that every detail is correct. Around the back, the engineers are fixing up the controls in the cab. This is the nerve center, and everything depends on the gear being just right. Next, the huge rods are fixed. And before long, the wheels will turn under their own steam for the first time. A proud moment for the fellows who built her. At last, she emerges from the workshops, sleek and polished, a new locomotive and a thing of beauty. For the next few days, she will go out on trial runs, and when the experts are satisfied, she will take her place in the service of the Iron Road.
Well, it's time we got back to our engine to move on again. Yes, the wheels often slip when we start up with a heavy load. Back in the kitchen, the chef's dishing up as we speed through the countryside. Already the first lunch is being served. Some passengers seem to think that we save up all the jolts for the soup, but the experienced traveller knows that there's an art in eating on a train, just as in a ship. We find sandwiches save a lot of bother all round. In between the mouthfuls, we may get a glimpse of the old market town of Selby, with its fine old abbey. But most folks are too busy seeing what comes next on the menu. Meanwhile, we're negotiating a short curve just before running into York Station with its long platform. 188 miles in 3 hours. Not exactly a record, perhaps, but pretty good going for these days. During the summer, we run non-stop, but now we're making a short halt. And as we pull in, there's the usual bustle on the platform. I'm told that York is one of the oldest cities in England. Back at the station, more passengers waiting for us. Usually we have to take over another engine at York, although sometimes we keep the same one right through. Now we're ready to move off again, and we pull gently away from the station. It takes a bit of time to get going with a heavy load, and this trip we're pulling 15 coaches, but we soon get into our stride. The next few miles are dead straight and quite level, which makes it easy going for me, but I've got to keep my eye on the track ahead just the same. We take no chances with the signals. And speaking of that, there's Northallerton signal box coming up. It's the most up-to-date on the run. It controls the track several miles in each direction. By means of bell codes, the train is offered to this signal box and it's accepted if the line is clear. And all this is accomplished by turning these little switches on the panel. The signalman can see the exact position on this diagram of every train as it moves through his section. And with the switch in front of him, he can control the tracks and signals. His mate notes down the time of every train as it passes through. And if we don't want to be entered as late, we must be getting on. Like Oliver Twist, our furnace is always wanting more, so Fred gets down to doing a bit more stoking. We're doing pretty well now. Well, I suppose 75 miles an hour doesn't mean much in these days. Still, we do carry a couple of thousand passengers, and that's more than your aeroplanes do. Of course, we get to know the route and can pick out the various landmarks, but it's the industrial areas which always interest me. Meanwhile, the passengers are sitting up and taking notice. We're coming to the outskirts of Durham. At the viaduct, we have to slow down a bit, and this gives you folk a chance of getting a good look at Durham Cathedral and the castle. I've heard it said that the railway provides the best view of those grand old buildings, and I must say they look fine in that soft evening sun. And as we pass, the passengers crane their necks for a last glimpse. Now they sit back again while we race on another 18 miles to Newcastle, rushing through the deserted local stations, out into the open country again. At this time of year, it all looks very pleasant. We don't get time to see the blemishes. Yes, this is Newcastle. Below us are the waters of the River Tyne, and along its banks the large shipbuilding yards. Beyond there are the high level and swing bridges. Newcastle is also the largest coal mining centre in the country, and hence the fine large station to deal with a constant stream of traffic, north and south. We go straight through, out of the station, passing the huge goods yards, and picking our way slowly through the maze of tracks. Soon we're out in the open countryside and can put on more speed. And while some of you take a nap, we're straining every effort to get you to your destination on time. Fred does a bit more stoking. Useful practice for the future, maybe. we're approaching the border at Berwick, over the old stone bridge with its 15 arches, and so into Scotland, although so far the landscape seems unaltered. But now, folks, you're almost there, and within a few minutes we shall be pulling into Way Station, Edinburgh. The old Preston Pans Tower marks our arrival. And now you can start sorting out your baggage.
This is Waverley Station, Edinburgh.
And so a 400-mile run is completed. Perhaps not exactly on time, but nearer to the mark than most things are in these days. Our passengers hurry off, intent on their own lives. Another railway journey over. A step in time and distance to a city which means something different to each one of them. Homecoming to some. Perhaps the last lap from far distant lands, when the sight of this grand familiar city grips the throat with a choking feeling of affection and relief. To them, this journey will be memorable forever. Unconsciously, they will join the ranks of those who hold a warm corner of their heart for Britain's Iron Road. To them, it is a part of our way of life, just as this trip has been to Tom and Fred, part of the job of keeping the wheels still turning over the tracks which link our lives with the past and bear us to a fuller future.